Well, you're still watching Cheche, the show where opinion counts, live on Citizen TV, and today we're discussing the state of the tourism industry in Kenya. We do have the Kenya Tourism Board Chairman Jimmy Kariuki with us, and the issue of pricing, because Charles Odhiambo put it that Kenya is still ranked 5th, the tourism sector in Africa, and part of this has been blamed on the pricing of our products, VAT on most of these products. How much influence do you have in terms of advising the government on how to price our products?
I believe that we have been actually quite successful in addressing the issue of pricing, and especially issues around taxation that has affected or results in higher pricing. And today, you know, the finance bill has been amended, the Finance Act has been amended, and VAT has been removed on tour operator brokerage fees. VAT has been removed on service charge for employees in hotels and restaurants. So that actually has a positive effect in terms of making us a lot more competitive. So in terms of pricing, you know, in terms of accommodation rates, those obviously are driven by demand and supply, but we are also very aware of the fact that, you know, we also need to look at how the economy is performing and the ability of travelers in the domestic market and internationally, and how we position ourselves against international markets. So a lot of our pricing strategy is not done in isolation, but I think in terms of taxation that affects it, I think there's been a positive impact on the waiving of this VAT, and we definitely are continuing to lobby government, and government is definitely supporting the industry in terms of making sure that we are competitive.
So you do agree that that VAT regime has actually been a disadvantage to Kenya, and if so, by what extent? Which country has a better advantage in terms of their pricing in Africa?
You know, I wouldn't say it's been a disadvantage, but it has not. I think VAT has not fully supported the destination to be competitive as a tourism destination. Obviously, different countries around Africa have their taxation regimes. You know, Tanzania, you know, has their taxation regime, and South Africa. And I'm just talking about some of our competitors versus benchmarks. But I think that the positive thing is that with the review and revisions of the VAT regime that affect the tourism industry, I think it helps us also as an industry communicate the value that is being offered, because obviously the feedback is if you're too expensive, you know, people just may be challenged to see what value they're getting. But I think, you know, it's easier for us now with our pricing to make sure that we have a fair balance between pricing and value.
And Bamuteki will tell you that even entry fees into parks is a bit on the higher side. 1,000 shillings per.
Well, that's into premium parks. You know, I must tell you that, you know, management of parks is not a cheap affair. You know, there's many things that one doesn't realize that the park authorities need to manage. You need to manage the infrastructure. You know, you need to manage the protection of the wildlife. You know, because we know that the biggest threat to wildlife, especially in these big parks, is poaching. So you need to make sure that you're continuously ahead of these kind of threats. So the investment that's involved, I think the pricing is not unfair in premium parks. But, you know, 1,000 shillings is the most that you will pay, you know, in urban parks. That's for domestic tourists, you know, 1,000 shillings for an adult and about 500 shillings for children. In urban parks like, you know, the Nairobi National Park, you pay about 500 shillings for an adult and half of that for children. So I think one has also got to look at the cost of actually maintaining a park, and I think that's where I think 1,000 shillings is not unreasonable, you know, when it comes to you know, the funds being used correctly.
But 9,000 for foreign tourists?
That's $60. $60 for average.
On average, $60.
Yeah, $60 for
so that's about 6,000 shillings.
So 6,000 shillings is what the park authorities charge. But obviously, you know, again, as I said, there's the cost of maintaining it, but the benefit obviously has to be given to the domestic traveler, which is why that differentiation exists. But you know, I believe that, you know, $60 to go and see wildlife and have an experience of a lifetime, I don't believe is too much to ask for. You know, so
Jimmy, allow me to call you that.
Yes, please.
your core mandate is marketing Kenya as a tourist destination abroad. Kenya has about over 40 million people. The most effective way of marketing is direct perception. What are you doing to ensure that Kenyans have confidence in their country, in this sector, so that when Fred here is talking to his pen pal, I don't know if they still exist abroad, you call and say, this is the place to be, and not, life is so hard in Kenya, the politics is so heated. I mean, what are you doing in involving the common Mwananchi to market Kenya abroad?
What we're doing is that we are engaging, in particular with the media, because I feel that the media plays a very, very important role in communicating to the Kenyan population. You know, we are making sure that, as I said, we are taking them around to see the destination, to see what the different products are. We are communicating to them for onward communication to Kenyans. We are on shows like this, where we are, saying that, travel around your country, see your beautiful country, so that helps you talk about your country, because we as Kenyans must have confidence and about our destination before we expect anybody else to have that confidence. So we're engaging continuously with media in particular. Like I said, next week we are launching affordable packages for the tourism sector, targeted specifically at the domestic market. We're going to go very aggressively with that in the local media. We're doing the trainings in the different counties where we'll go and train the travel agents, the small travel shops on selling domestic, and we will continue to engage and do familiarization trips with the media, so that we are continuing to keep the positive message going. That's very important for us.
These days there are very many vernacular radio stations all over the country. Some going maybe regional. I don't know how much of that are you using?
Well, we're not using enough. That's another area that, we need to also start focusing on, how we communicate the Kenya tourism product through vernacular stations. We have on some stations communicated in the past, but that's another strategy that we're also going to be using. So when I talk about media, it's cutting across. So it's not just the English-speaking media, because if we're talking about sending the message to rural areas, you need to make sure that you're using the right communication channels that not only reaches them, but also helps them to understand what the message is. So that's part of our media strategy, is cutting across the different media channels in terms of reach and language.
Since devolution came to this country, there have been a lot of cultural activities in the counties. In fact, I think almost every county has got some some cultural activities annually.
Yes.
Of course, not even forgetting about the investment conferences that they've been having, all of them. How much of that have you used?
Well, we participate in the cultural events. We make sure that we are there as a tourism board. So, for example, the Lamu cultural event, we're there. And, other activities that take place, whether it's things like the marathons that take place in certain locations. So we definitely make sure that we are there to present Destination Kenya, and communicate and engage with the local players, and onward communicate that, locally, and also onward communicate it through our marketing destination representatives, because also these cultural events are very much a part of the product. So again, as I said, the product is not only about beach and bush, but culture is very important, heritage is important, history is important. So we definitely make sure that the Kenya Tourism Board has a presence in a lot of these activities, because they are important, and it's important that we're there.
Okay, now this Tourism Recovery Task Force, there's also the Tourism Regulatory Authority, and there's the Kenya Tourism Board.
Yes.
Are all this working
on Kenya?
Yes. Are they doing the same job, or is it just a duplication of roles?
No, they're not. The Tourism Recovery Task Force, which was set up, it's been working since 2014, but it was officially gazetted in 2015, it was predominantly a private sector body that was set up to look at what challenges were facing the tourism industry when it was very clear that we were on a very serious downhill trend, and come up with solutions and recommendations that the government could implement, which they did. So they came up with, increase the funding for tourism, obviously issues around security, come up with incentives for aviation, focus on domestic tourism, focus on regional tourism. So a lot of the incentives that are being given now by government have been drawn from the recommendations of the tourism, and it's mandated, it's made its presentation of its recommendations, and we're seeing a lot of that happening now.
So it's no longer in existence?
It's still in existence. It hasn't been disbanded, but they've presented their report, and really that report is what the government is using to develop a lot of the incentives and carry out activities. So right now it's the implementation stage. The regulatory authority, their role is to regulate standards, is to regulate the standards of the industry, to make sure that the industry is meeting standards, to make sure that the star rating of
hotels, the ones that
classify hotels? Classification of hotels, and making sure that standards are maintained and policies are in place to make sure that the destination doesn't become a cheap and disorganized destination. So they have a very, very specific role. Brand Kenya, which was part of the Kenya Ministry of Tourism, is no longer part of our ministry. Now it's gone to the Ministry of Industrialization. Their role is very, very different. Their role is very much about positioning Kenya as a leading investment destination, a tourism investment destination and investment destination for many other aspects. So theirs is about communicating about destination Kenya and the investment opportunities in Kenya. So therefore, make it Kenya. The Kenya Tourism Board, we, as I said, we are a marketing body, and our mandate is to market the attributes of the destination to the overseas markets, to encourage tourism travel. So tourism travel includes conferencing, it includes meetings, it includes exhibitions, it includes leisure visitors, it includes family travel and all that. So that's our mandate. So the mandates are actually very, very different. But there is definitely a link, and there's definitely an important role that we can all, it ensures that we all meet because we all want to achieve the same thing.
Do you have a Palika platform where all these different bodies sit around one table?
Currently we don't have a single platform where we sit, but outside of Brand Kenya, we share a common, the other bodies that you mentioned, particularly Kenya Tourism Board and the Tourism Regulatory Authority, we have a common ministry. Kenya International Convention Center, we have a common ministry, and we use those platforms to make sure that we are all heading in the right direction. We are communicating complementary activities as opposed to competing activities, but we are constantly in touch with each other. We're constantly meeting with private sector. In fact, we've had numerous private sector engagements with the coast. We have another private sector engagement coming up in about a week's time. So we're constantly communicating, and we're communicating in a structured way through the Kenya Tourism Federation, who is the umbrella body for the private sector. So the communication is there. So I believe we're all moving in the same direction.
Okay. Gentlemen, any other questions?
I'm looking at the composition, the departmental heads in your organization.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, 4 months down the line into your reign, you still have so many people acting up. Think apart from the ICT guy and maybe 1 or 2 others. The rest, including the marketing manager, your core responsibility is acting. Could this uncertainty play a role in achieving your objectives?
Well, I must say that, the acting capacities that are there, that we are as a board very focused on filling those positions, and in fact we do have a substantive marketing director, but because we have been in the process of recruiting a substantive chief executive officer, and I'm happy to say that we have concluded the process of competitive recruitment of a chief executive officer, and we are now going through the process of final appointment. We do have a substantive marketing director, but because that individual has been in an acting capacity, that has meant that there's been an acting marketing director. We are focusing on filling these positions. It's critical that we focus on filling these positions, and we are moving in the right direction. Our committees are making sure that the key positions are being filled, and by the end of this year, we aim to have all these acting capacities in the Kenya Tourism Board filled completely. We did have a challenge where some of our resources were seconded to other ministries within, or parastatals within the tourism ministry, which is it does happen, to give them support. But by the end of this year, we will have substantive resources in all the key positions in the Kenya Tourism Board, including a substantive chief executive officer.
Infrastructure is very important when it comes to tourism, and sometimes you find that destinations like Masai Mara, the road is horrible. Or some airports or airstrips are not accessible during certain times of weather. What influence do you have to ensure that there is proper infrastructure to those destinations?
Yeah, we have a lot of influence. In fact, as you're aware, CS Macharia has already commissioned the upgrade of the Masai Mara road, because that's the main road leading to our key destination. So we are continuously influencing, through our parent ministry. We are continuously influencing and engaging together with the private sector to talk to a lot of these institutions that are very key to infrastructure and very key to image, because infrastructure has an important impact on image. Anybody driving on a bad road to a key destination, it doesn't do your image any favors. So we are engaging, and I'm glad to say that there's been a positive response from the key organizations, including at the airports and road related. So we, again, as I said, we are moving in the right direction. Better late than never, but things are happening now.
But as I said, politics. Remember the other day, there's a road to Naro, to Masai Mara. There were some chaos there because some animals. There was an accident, I think, and they blocked the road.
Yeah,
that's what this guy is asking about, making Kenyans know that
appreciate this vital sector.
When you see people blocking tourists from going to Masai Mara because a few cattle have been killed by an accident, surely this is turning us back to primitivity.
Absolutely, and this is where I say that constant engagement with counties is very, very important. For me, the route is through the counties. That we are encouraging the counties to continue to communicate on the benefit of tourism to the local communities. It's very critical that they are actually communicating to their local communities that there is a benefit, that if you do behave in that manner, the only people really who are going to suffer are yourselves. Yes, eventually the bigger picture will also suffer. But appreciating the impact and positive impact of tourism on their environment. So we're continuing to engage the counties, and I agree that those are challenges, but those are challenges that we must address and we will address.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jimmy Kariuki, a very optimistic Kenya Tourism Board chairman, discussing the state of the tourism industry right here on Cheche. Now, well, on behalf of my panelists, Mutagi Njau and Charles Odhiambo, thank you so much, Jimmy Kariuki. My name is Freddy Ndimuli. Cheche. We'll be back next week.